It is my dad's birthday, and I'm going to take you down a memory lane to 2 of his best chess games ever. And he's had quite a career. I mean, if you don't know who my dad is a grandmaster. He became a grandmaster in 1978. I had it all under control. I knew it. I had to check it out in his Wikipedia, but I knew it. Absolutely knew it. 1978. So my dad, he basically started playing chess after he got a chessboard as a Christmas gift when he was a little kid. He started playing chess and he would go on to become Spanish champion several times. And he was born in Spain, right? And then later on he would meet my mom, and then he would coach my mom, etc., etc. But during his prime, he had a lot of really good results. And one of them was that he drew in 1973 when he was 23 years old. He was 1 year older than me. He drew Anatoly Karpov in a classical game. Now, Karpov would become world champion only 2 years later in 1975. And in 1973, he was already rated like 2,600 back then. There's been some ELO inflation, so 2,600 back then is like a lot of rating. Like it's a huge amount of rating. I think it was like 2,650 or something in 1973. That was the rating of Karpov. And my dad was just, you know, a 23-year-old Spanish guy who wasn't a grandmaster. So this was huge for my dad back then. And yeah. And so, okay, I'm going to show you the game. So Karpov, he started the game with c4. This was played in Madrid, Spain, the capital of Spain, the 1st of December, 1973. My dad replied e5, knight c3, knight c6, g3, and f5. Okay, so this is just... Wait, what is this music? This is just basically a way for black to get quite a lot of center, and I think that this looks really nice. But you're gonna see, after bishop g2, and he brought out his knight, d3, he went out with his bishop, and then after e3 he played this move f4, which is not really that good of a move. But you have to remember that back at this time there were no engines or no anything like that, so obviously the level of chess was slightly worse than what it is today. So he played f4, and what is the idea of f4? The idea is that he wanted to make him double his pawns. So basically, if this, and this, then the pawns are going to be doubled, and then he can play something like castles, and these pawns are terrible. Now, what happens if he goes e takes f4? Well, this is what happened in the game. Then my dad just castled. So he didn't even capture back. He just castled and sacrificed a pawn a la Juan Manuel Bellón Lopez style, which is the same kind of style as me when I'm playing Blitz, okay? This is where I've learned to sacrifice and play chess like there's no tomorrow. This is exactly that. So there was no eval bar back then. There was no things like this. It was a lot more that you had to play with just creativity and your own brain, right? Because there was no engines, no one that could tell you this, or no engine that could tell you this is right or wrong. So Karpov went out with this knight. My dad went d6, castles, queen e8. He was trying to bring the queen to the other side, then bring up the knight, and then checkmate. Very easy plan. And then Karpov started attacking my dad's pieces. So he attacked the bishop. My dad went up with the bishop. Takes, he took with the pawn. And now all of a sudden, this bishop really sucks. So yes, my dad is a pawn down, but it's a double pawn. And this bishop really sucks. Now, if you're wondering also why we're watching these games right now, it's also because I'm going to be playing chess later. And I thought that if I watched a little bit of Grandmaster chess myself, this will make me play better chess as well. So this is also for me to see some very strong players play chess and make me feel inspired to play good chess myself. I've realized that the best way of improving is by watching people that are better than you, which is why it's great that you guys are watching this stream, because then you're learning a lot of things and hopefully getting inspired to becoming amazing chess players. I'm sure that's what's happening when you're watching. So, a3, he wanted to go b4 just to expand over here. So my dad played a5 just to prevent b4. He said, you know, why am I supposed to let Karpov play b4? You know? How many rating points do we get per subscription? 5 rating points. No, 10. 5 is too low. Let me bump it up. So, b6, sorry, b3, bishop f5. Now the idea is to put pressure on this pawn. He wanted to go queen g6 and then just threaten this pawn. That is what he wanted to do. So, knight b2, now Karpov just wanted to reroute the knight to defend this pawn because this pawn is looking weak. Plus, this knight on a4 doesn't really have a lot of squares because the knight cannot go back to c3. So, this is almost the only place for the knight to go to. So, queen g6, forcing now the knight and the queen to stay. Queen c2. The knight went back to go knight over here and then put a lot of pressure on this pawn. There's like a triple battery. Bishop, knight, queen, everything just pointing towards that one pawn. The rook went to the open file. Now the knight went up. Once again, just attacking this pawn. And now, bishop f1. And look at how passively Karpov is playing now. Like, imagine sitting in front of the soon-to-be world champion and just forcing him to just move backwards all the time. The knight goes back, the bishop goes back. You know, like, imagine that feeling. Like, if I did this with Magnus Carlsen, it would be the best day of my life. And that is probably how my dad must have felt when he was playing this. Because this is not such a nice position for white. Even if white is a pawn up, this is not that nice of a position. So, rook a6. This move looks so strange. This is the kind of move that I would never do because it's like, what is the rook doing here? But the idea is to go rook b6 and then attack this pawn. This is the idea. So, wait, let me just change the music really quickly. So that is the idea. Let me just put a little bit more of something like this. So this is the idea. He wants to attack this pawn right here that is right now kind of weak. So, bishop d2, just to develop the bishop. And now the idea is that after rook b6, there is actually bishop takes a5. Bishop takes a5. Now, why can Karpov just sacrifice his bishop? Because if my dad takes, there's b4 fork. Huge fork. Okay? So, this did not happen. After bishop takes a5, my dad took on b3. Rook takes pawn, also threatening now this pawn. And now the bishop went back. So yet my dad cannot take because if takes then the rook is hanging. But so he went rook a8 to attack this pawn. And now this position is like, mwah. It's like amazing. It's okay, it's not like black is better, but my dad is definitely equal now and his pieces are so active. The knight is active, the rook is active, this rook is active. Everything is active right now. So this is hanging right now. So what do you do to defend this pawn? Well, you have to move it because you cannot really defend it in any way. I mean, you don't really want to go bishop b4 because then there's just takes and takes. So the only thing that you can do as white is to push the pawn. Now I cannot take it. So my dad decided, okay, if the queen side is now solid, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna attack the king. h5. I mean, look at the confidence when he's playing Karpov. He just went h5 literally to just go h4 and then just try to open up everything in front of the king. He's just pushing the pawn like there's no tomorrow. Literally doing a very kind of dad style move, I feel like. Thank you so much, Ulan. Thank you for the 52 months. Thank you. Happy birthday for Juan. Thank you. Thank you also, Jenkins, for the 22 months. Really appreciate it. Cylon, thank you for the prime. Imamor, thank you for the 9 months. And Apricus, thank you for the 7 months as well. I'm back with my 7th month. So, very aggressive. So now, h3 was played. So that if h4, it can be met with g4. So now my dad decided to continue. Rook a6. He's going to go rook b6 and attack this knight. You see how he's playing on both sides? It's like a little bit of salt and pepper. A little bit of salt over here, a little bit of pepper over here. So that together you can mix the flavors into a beautiful dish. And that is what he's trying to do. So a5 was played to prevent the rook from going to b6 because the rook on b6 would be very strong. So now knight b4. He's threatening the queen. And the queen, where does it go? If the queen moves somewhere, then this knight is going to be taking this pawn. So the only thing you can do is take the knight. Because if the queen moves, you lose this really important pawn as white. So trades. And then after this, rook a3, defending the pawn. Karpov really did not want to lose this pawn. So now that this rook is on a square where it's not defended by any other piece, bam, the attack continues. b6. You cannot take on b6 because then I eat your rook. Then I take your rook. The rook is unprotected, right? So you cannot take here. So now this pawn is under attack. So what move does Karpov do? Well, he goes rook ea1, defending this pawn, but also defending this rook. So my dad goes queen e6, threatening this pawn, and basically saying, if you go something like king h2, well, okay, I'm not exactly sure actually what he's going to do here. Maybe he can go king h7 as well. But the idea is that white never wants to take on b6 because then there's going to be rook takes and then this is going to be hanging. So white doesn't want to do it, but white did it right here. And now my dad took. And then after check, the king went up. And now queen d1, threatening here. But this pawn right here is very, very weak. How good was Karpov at this time? He was 2650 rated. So he would become world champion 2 years after this. But in 1973, when this game was played, Karpov was rated 2650. So he was very high rated. Like he was very good. He was very, very good. Rooks seem delicious. Rooks are what grandmasters eat for breakfast. Rooms are really... rooks. Rooks are really good. So... okay, so the pawn is hanging, right? This pawn is hanging. So what does my dad do? He defends it. g6. Karpov goes knight a4, which is the best move. And now they trade everything, and then my dad takes this pawn. Now this endgame is not so good for him. It's like +1 for white, but I mean, okay, it wasn't so easy to play, I think. So rook went over here, threatening this pawn. My dad took on f1, literally like allowing rook take c7, which is what happened with check. And now after the king moves up and queen takes f1, I think now Karpov is just a pawn up. So it's just one pawn up. This looks good for him, but what does my dad do? He keeps going for the attack. h4. Now, what is going to happen now? Well, he's trying to threaten to take here and then bring up the queen and bring up the rook and just, you know, kill this king. Like, I mean, just destroy this king. That is what he's trying to do. So, h4. The attack continues. So what does Karpov do? He goes king g2. He doesn't want any checks. He doesn't want anything bad. But then my dad goes rook b2. Threatening now, this is the best move, threatening to take on g3 so that the king has to take and the pawn cannot take. And if the king has to take, I mean, then this king is dancing tango. Like, this king is in the middle of nowhere. So what does Karpov do? Karpov goes here, king f3. Which just looks insane. Like, what is going on? He just goes king f3 just so that he can get rid of all of these threats. Because he doesn't want to go king over here. Because he doesn't want black to take here. Wish we had the clock situation. This game is 50 years old. I mean, we should be happy we have the game. This game is literally like more than twice my age. Like, I am 22 years old. This game is 51 years old. This game is over double my age. Like, don't ask for clocks and at this point. Just be happy that this game exists. So the king is running, right? So my dad goes d5. Why? Because he wants to take, and then this king... I mean, it's going to be almost checkmate if this happens. So he takes on h4. Rook b3. Now, once again, threatening to take here because this pawn is pinned. My dad is just pinning the king constantly. Plus, now if the king goes back here, there's going to be queen g4 check. So now, Karpov starts getting scared. This I do not know, but I would imagine. So, I'm gonna say it. Karpov starts getting scared here. He doesn't know how to continue the game. So he takes on d5. Queen takes d5. Where does the king go? Okay, king goes to g3. Also, can I just say, now I just realized there weren't even digital clocks back then. Like this is 1973, people. They did not even have digital clocks. They had like literally, you know what clocks they had? Let me show you what they had. This is what they had. This is what they had back then. This is where the term flagged comes from. It's because you literally would flag. So this like thing would fall down. Like, did I break it? Oh. So the moment the clock was here and basically after like this went down, the flag would basically fall, and that's where flagged comes from in chess. It's literally, you know, a flag. So this is like an old chess clock, and when I was growing up, even I, and I'm only 22 years old, I'm pretty young, even I played with these clocks a lot of times. So yeah, this is the way you go. You just press, and then it does like a ticking sound. Then it goes tick-tock, 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 and you kind of go crazy playing chess and listening to this tick-tock sound all the time. But yeah, but this is what they played in. So I mean, this they did not save the time situations. That was impossible to save. So yeah, that is an old chess clock. That's what they used back then, and that is also what you see in the Queen's Gambit. It's that kind of clock. I have a lot of these at home because, you know, chess family. But yeah. So King G3. What did my dad do? He went Queen F5, threatening to take this pawn. He now has 2 pieces attacking this. So F3 is played. There's no way of defending the pawn, but better not be in check when that is taken. So Rook takes D3. Rook goes to C6. Rook C3. My dad wanted just to trade rooks and then to get this passed pawn because then he would be winning. Pretty much. I mean, okay, not completely, but it would give him a lot of winning chances. It's still a draw. But yeah, but Rook D6. King H5. The king is going all the way up. Now my dad is slightly better. The only move Karpov has that is a good move is to go King G2. Because if he does something random, there's Queen G4 check. Beautiful move, winning the game. And after King F2, there is Rook C2 check. And after King E1, Queen takes F4, and it's going to be checkmate. So the idea of King H5 is actually to go Queen G4 check, which I think looks beautiful. Because it looks like you're giving up a queen, but you're not. But it just looks so weird to give a check like this. So I think that is a beautiful check. So that is the idea of King H5. So King G2, Rook C2 check. The king went back. My dad went back. The king went back. And in this position, most people would just take the draw, right? Back and forth. Must draw. But what does my dad do? He wants to win the game. So he goes Queen takes F4. He decides to not repeat against Karpov, okay? Literally 23-year-old guy from Spain, not even a grandmaster, is playing one of the best chess players in the world, who's literally one of the top-rated players in the whole world at that time. And he just says, nope, I want to beat you. So I think that is so funny. So Queen takes F4, it makes sense. It's a good move. It's just that it's funny that he didn't want to take the immediate draw there. So my dad was probably screaming "Vamos" in his brain. Like, let's beat Karpov now. So Rook D5. Wait, let me just change the music really quickly. So Rook D5 check. My dad went King H6. Queen E2. Queen C1. There aren't really any checks right now, and the threat is to go Rook C2. And now Karpov, if he's not careful, he's going to be losing. So he does an insane move. And after that move, it's a draw. People watching this, can you guess what the move is? What was Karpov's saving move? Can you guess it? Offer draw? No. That is not it. It's not offering a draw. You subscribe for a few more rating points last minute. Go to a bathroom for 2 hours. Honestly, back then there were no phones to cheat with, so even going to the bathroom wouldn't help him in that moment. So I'm seeing that a lot of you are seeing the move. Karpov in this position went Rook h5 check, sacrificing the rook, but it's a perpetual. And as soon as he did this move, my dad and him agreed to a draw. Rook h5 was the final move of this game, and I think it's a beautiful move because you're just sacrificing a rook. It can be taken both with the pawn and with the king, but it doesn't matter. It's a draw. Now, let me show you why it's a draw, because it doesn't look so clear why this is a draw. Let's start if he takes with the pawn. If he takes with the pawn, there's queen e6 check, and no matter what, the queen will just be going back and forth because the king cannot go up here. It's just always going to be a draw. Bam, 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 bam. You know, it's nothing. The king cannot escape. So pawn takes looks quite simple. Pawn takes looks quite simple. So in this position, what happens if king takes? Well, then there's queen e5 check. There's a few different moves. If you go here, there's queen h8 checkmate, which is the important point here, that the king cannot retreat. So after queen e5 check, you must either go g5 or you must go king takes h4. If king takes h4, then there's queen h2 check, and after king g5, it's going to be perpetual through this. Bam, doesn't matter. It's literally the king is stuck. Through this, the king is stuck. The king cannot go anywhere. So, if g5 in this position, which is maybe the most critical move, we don't have time for queen h8 now. No, we must go queen e8 check. And after king h6, queen e6, and we have the same position as before, where the pawn was here, basically. It's almost the same position, because here you're always going to be able to check. So it's going to be a very similar position where it's just always going to be a draw. You just go back and forth and it's a draw. But I think that this is beautiful. Like, rook h5 check is beautiful, and it works only because of this. He cannot bring in the queen in any single way because of the fact that there's this pawn here, and if he takes it, there's no time. So let's say that he goes here, queen e5. You see that here the problem is that there's never any time to bring in the queen because the king only has a few legal moves, which are this and this. And both of these are met with a check. There's no way of bringing in the queen. What if he doesn't take? If he doesn't take in this position, the only thing he can do is either g5, take. I mean, if he goes here, he gives up the queen, or go king h6 and then bam, checkmate. The saddest ending of them all. So that is that. What if he doesn't take the rook? Well, if after rook h5, if he goes king g7 instead of taking the rook, the problem is that now my dad is getting checkmated. After this, rook h8, king f7, rook h7, king g8, and queen g7 checkmate. It becomes a checkmate. So that also becomes a whoop situation. So you must take the rook, but then it's a draw. So this is how my dad drew Karpov in 1973. And like I said, in 1975, Karpov would go on and become world champion and be that for over 5 years. Like for several years, Karpov would be world champion. So I think that this is really cool. And I wanted to show you the game because many of you might not know that. And I think it's really cool.